Jason, can I confess something? There was a time when I thought could, should, and would were basically the same word wearing different outfits. Every time I saw them in a sentence, I'd stop for a second and think, okay, which one goes here again? And honestly, if you've ever felt that way, you're definitely not alone.
Absolutely. Because these are three tiny words, but they're responsible for thousands and thousands of English mistakes every single day. The funny thing is, English learners often understand them individually, but when they're speaking quickly, their brains suddenly go, could, should, would, help.
Exactly. And today we're going to make those three words feel simple. Not through complicated grammar rules, not through boring charts, but through real conversations and real situations.
Including one conversation that's about to go spectacularly wrong. Because Emma and Daniel are going to use all three words incorrectly. And honestly, it's a disaster.
A hilarious disaster. So listen carefully, see if you can spot the mistakes, and by the end of today's episode, you'll know exactly when to use could, should, and would naturally. Before we continue, let's see how confident you're feeling right now. And don't worry, this isn't a test. Think of it as a quick challenge. Here's the situation. Imagine you're walking to work one morning. The sky looks clear, the weather forecast looked fine, and everything seems perfectly normal. But then, out of nowhere, it starts pouring rain. And that's when you realize you forgot your umbrella.
A classic mistake, and unfortunately, one that usually happens on the day you're wearing your favorite clothes.
Exactly. So later that day, you're talking to a friend about what happened, and you ask, I forgot my umbrella. What blank I do next time? Which word sounds most natural? Could, should, or would? Take a moment and think about it. Don't overthink it. Just go with your first instinct.
And here's the important part. Don't worry if you're not completely sure, because by the end of today's episode, the answer will feel obvious. You'll not only know which word is correct, you'll understand exactly why it's correct.
Keep your answer in mind, because we'll reveal it later. But first, let's listen to Emma and Daniel create a very impressive grammar disaster.
Do you have any plans for this weekend?
Not really. I would visit my cousin on Saturday.
Oh, that's nice. I think you should visit your cousin if you want to spend time with family.
Yes, I could visit him. In fact, I already planned it.
That's good. What would I do this weekend?
Maybe you should go shopping.
Why should I go shopping?
I don't know. I thought you were asking for advice.
No, I was just talking about my plans.
Oh. Then maybe you could go shopping.
Maybe. Or I should go shopping.
Or you would go shopping.
Now I'm confused.
What about Sunday?
I would clean my apartment.
Why would you clean your apartment?
Because it's messy.
Then you should clean your apartment.
That's what I said.
No, you said would.
Aren't they the same?
I think so.
Really?
Actually, maybe not.
We're doing a great job so far.
Do you think it will rain this weekend?
If it rains, I should take an umbrella.
Yes, that's smart.
Or I would take an umbrella.
Or you could take an umbrella.
Why are there so many choices?
That's exactly what I'm wondering.
Let's talk about food instead.
Good idea.
What should we eat for lunch tomorrow?
We would eat pizza.
Are we planning it or imagining it?
I don't know anymore.
Maybe we could eat pizza?
Or we should eat pizza.
Or we would eat pizza. Every answer sounds different.
I need to buy a birthday gift for my sister.
You would buy a book.
Why would I buy a book?
Because she likes reading.
Then shouldn't you say I should buy a book?
Maybe.
Or I could buy a book?
That's true too.
Now I have 3 different answers.
And somehow none of them are helping.
You know what?
What?
I think we should learn the difference between these words.
I agree.
We could study them this weekend.
That's a good idea.
We would study them this weekend.
And we're confused again.
Completely confused.
Hopefully, we'll figure it out soon.
We should.
We could.
We would.
Okay, now we're definitely in trouble.
All right, Jason. After listening to Emma and Daniel, I think it's safe to say that they were using could, should, and would almost interchangeably. And honestly, that's exactly what many English learners do. Because these words often appear in similar situations, but they're actually doing very different jobs.
Exactly. So let's start with could. And here's the easiest way to remember it. Most of the time, could is connected to possibility, ability, suggestions, or polite requests. Think of it as the word that opens doors. It doesn't force a decision, it simply shows that something is possible.
Ooh, I like that. Could opens doors. Let's start with possibility. Imagine it's Saturday morning. You look outside and see dark clouds. You might say, it could rain later. Notice something important. You're not saying it will rain. You're not certain. You're simply saying it's possible.
Exactly. And native speakers use this kind of sentence all the time. The traffic could be bad today. The meeting could take longer than expected. The restaurant could be crowded tonight. None of these things are guaranteed. They're just possibilities.
And honestly, life is full of possibilities. Some good, some bad, and some involving accidentally sending a text message to the wrong person.
A surprisingly common possibility.
A very embarrassing possibility.
Now, let's talk about another common use of could, ability in the past. This is one that learners hear all the time. For example, when I was 10 years old, I could swim. Or when she was younger, she could play the piano beautifully. Or my grandfather could speak 3 languages. Here, could tells us about an ability someone had in the past.
Exactly. And I always think it's fun to look back at things we could do when we were younger. For example, when I was a student, I could stay awake until 2 in the morning and still function the next day. Now, if I stay awake past midnight, I spend the next day wondering what happened to my life.
I relate to that far too much. When I was younger, I could eat an entire pizza without thinking twice. Now I eat a few slices and immediately start calculating how much exercise I'll need later.
Growing up is a strange experience.
Now, let's move to another very useful use of could, suggestions. And honestly, this is one of the most practical uses for everyday conversations. Imagine your friend says, "I'm bored." You might reply, "You could watch a movie," or "You could go for a walk," or "You could call a friend." You're not giving strong advice. You're simply offering ideas.
That's a really important distinction. Because when we use could for suggestions, it feels light, relaxed, flexible. It's like saying, here's one possible idea. Not, you absolutely must do this.
Exactly. Imagine your friend says, "I don't know where to go on vacation." You could say, "You could visit Italy." You could go to the mountains. You could spend a few days at the beach. They're suggestions, not instructions.
And that's why could often sounds friendly, because it gives people choices.
Now, let's talk about one of the most useful uses of could, polite requests. This is something you'll hear every day in English-speaking environments. Instead of saying, "Open the window," you might say, "Could you open the window?" Suddenly the sentence sounds much more polite, much friendlier, much softer.
Exactly. And native speakers love softening requests. Imagine you're at a cafe. You might ask, "Could I have a coffee, please?" Not, give me a coffee. Because one sounds polite and the other sounds like you're ordering someone around.
That's true. Or imagine you're at work. You might say, "Could you send me that file? Could you help me for a moment? Could you explain that again?" These are all extremely common.
And honestly, if English learners start using could for polite requests, their English immediately sounds more natural.
So let's put everything together. Could can talk about possibility. It could rain later. Ability in the past. I could swim when I was 5. Suggestions? You could try a different restaurant. Polite requests. Could you help me?
And that's the key idea. Whenever you hear could, think possible. A possible situation. A possible ability. A possible idea. Or a polite way to ask for something.
Exactly. And now we're ready to move to the next word. The one that Emma and Daniel kept using whenever they wanted to sound helpful.
All right, Jason. Now that we've explored could, let's move on to a word that many learners use every single day, sometimes correctly, and sometimes in places where it definitely doesn't belong. And that word is should.
Exactly. And if I had to summarize should in one simple idea, I'd say this. Should is all about advice, recommendations, expectations, and good ideas. It's the word we use when we think something is the right thing to do. Not something that's required, not something that's guaranteed, but something that's probably a good idea.
Ooh, that's a great way to explain it. Because when people hear should, they often think it's a command. But usually it isn't. It's much softer than that. Imagine your friend says, "I'm always tired." You might say, "You should get more sleep." You're not forcing them. You're not making a rule. You're simply giving advice.
Exactly. And advice is probably the most common use of should. You should drink more water. You should take a break. You should call your parents. You should back up your computer files. And honestly, that last one becomes very important the moment something goes wrong.
It's amazing how quickly people become experts at giving advice after a problem happens. After your phone breaks, everyone suddenly says, "You should have been more careful." After you miss a flight, people say, "You should have left earlier." And after you eat an entire pizza by yourself, someone always says, "You should make healthier choices."
People are very helpful after the disaster.
Very helpful. A little late, but very helpful.
Now, let's talk about another common use of should. Recommendations. Imagine a friend is visiting your city for the first time. They ask, "What should I see while I'm here?" You might say, "You should visit the old town. You should try the local food. You should see the museum." These aren't rules. They're recommendations. You're sharing your opinion.
Exactly. And we do this all the time. If somebody asks for a movie recommendation, you might say, "You should watch that new comedy." If somebody wants a book suggestion, you might say, "You should read this novel." If somebody is learning English, you might say, "You should listen to English podcasts every day."
I happen to think that's excellent advice.
I wonder why.
Now, let's look at something slightly different. Should is also used for expectations, for things we think will probably happen. For example, the train should arrive soon. You're not 100% certain, but based on the schedule, you expect it. Or, the package should be here tomorrow. Again, it's an expectation, not a guarantee.
That's such an important point, because many learners think should only means advice, but native speakers use it for expectations all the time. For example, if you're waiting for a friend who's running late, you might say, "She should be here in 10 minutes. You're not giving advice. You're simply saying that's what you expect.
Exactly. And here's a funny real-life example. Every Sunday evening, I tell myself, I should finish all my work tonight. That's my expectation. Then somehow, 3 hours disappear, and suddenly I'm watching videos about things I never intended to learn about.
That is dangerously relatable. 1 minute you're checking the weather, and 45 minutes later you're learning how ancient castles were built.
The internet is a very distracting place.
Now, let's compare could and should, because this is where many learners get confused. Imagine your friend says, I want to get healthier. You could say, you could go for a walk every day. That's a suggestion, one possible idea. But if you say, you should go for a walk every day, now it sounds like advice, something you genuinely think is a good idea.
Exactly, and that's the difference. Could says, here's an option. Should says, this is probably a good idea. It's a subtle difference, but it's a very important one.
Let's try another example. Imagine somebody says, I want to improve my English. You could say, you could watch English movies. That's one possible suggestion. Or, you should watch English movies. Now you're actively recommending it. You're saying, I think this will help.
And once learners understand that difference, their English becomes much more precise.
So let's put everything together. Should is commonly used for advice. You should get more sleep. Recommendations. You should visit that restaurant. Expectations. The train should arrive soon. And generally, things that seem like good ideas.
Exactly. Whenever you hear should, think, this sounds like advice, a recommendation, or something expected. That's usually the clue.
All right, Jason. We've talked about could, we've talked about should, and now we've arrived at the word that probably creates the most confusion of all. Would. And honestly, I completely understand why learners struggle with it. Because would seems to appear everywhere. In conversations, in movies, in songs, in stories, and sometimes it feels like native speakers are using it for absolutely everything.
That's true. And the good news is there's actually a pattern. In many situations, would helps us talk about preferences, imaginary situations, polite offers, and things that are not happening right now, but are being imagined or considered.
Exactly. And let's start with one of the most useful expressions in everyday English. I'd rather. Because native speakers use this constantly. Imagine someone asks, would you like to go jogging at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning? I might say, I'd rather sleep.
A very honest answer.
A very realistic answer. Or imagine someone asks, would you like tea? You could say, I'd rather have coffee. You're expressing a preference. You're choosing one thing over another. And that's one of the most common uses of would.
Exactly. Listen to these examples. I'd rather stay home tonight. I'd rather watch a comedy. I'd rather travel by train. I'd rather eat pizza. In every case, you're talking about what you prefer.
Now, let's move to another huge use of would. And that's imaginary situations. These are the famous what-if situations. The situations that exist only in our imagination. For example, if I won the lottery, I would travel around the world. Have you won the lottery? No. Are you traveling around the world? No. You're imagining. That's why we use would.
Exactly. And people do this all the time. If I had more free time, I would learn another language. If I lived near the beach, I would go swimming every day. If I were rich, I would buy a huge house. We're imagining a different reality, a different life, a different situation.
And honestly, I think everyone has these imaginary conversations in their head. Sometimes I'll think, if I didn't have to work tomorrow, I would stay up all night watching movies. And then reality reminds me that I absolutely do have to work tomorrow.
Reality can be very disappointing sometimes.
Now let's talk about another extremely common use, polite offers and polite questions. Because English speakers love sounding polite. Instead of saying, "Do you want coffee?" you might hear, "Would you like some coffee?" And instantly the sentence sounds warmer, more polite, more friendly.
Exactly. Imagine you're at a restaurant. The server might ask, "Would you like to see the dessert menu?" Or "Would you like another drink?" Or "Would you like a table by the window?" These are all very common, and they're all using would to sound polite.
And here's something interesting. Even when native speakers know the answer might be no, they often use would because it sounds respectful. It's less direct, less forceful, more conversational.
Now let's compare all three words together, because this is where everything finally starts making sense. Imagine your friend says, "I want to improve my English." You could say, "You could listen to podcasts." That's a suggestion, one possible idea.
Or, "You should listen to podcasts." Now it's advice. You're recommending it. You genuinely think it's a good idea.
And then imagine somebody asks, "If you had more time, what would you do?" You might answer, "I would listen to podcasts every day." Now you're imagining a situation. That's why we use would.
Ooh, that's such a useful comparison. Because learners often see these words separately. But when you compare them side by side, the differences become much clearer.
Let's try another example. Imagine it's raining outside. Could. It could rain all day. Possibility. Should. You should take an umbrella. Advice. Would. If I had an umbrella, I would walk to work. Imaginary situation.
Look at that. 3 words, 3 meanings, 3 completely different purposes. And suddenly they're not nearly as scary.
So let's do one final summary before moving on. Could equals possibility, past ability, suggestions, polite requests. Should equals advice, recommendations, expectations. Would equals preferences, imaginary situations, polite offers, and what-if scenarios.
And honestly, if you remember those 3 ideas, you'll understand a huge percentage of the situations where these words appear in everyday English. Because native speakers use them constantly. Not because they're difficult, but because they're useful.
Exactly. And now that we've finally untangled the mystery of could, should, and would, it's time to see whether Emma and Daniel can actually use them correctly.
Let's find out. Because in the next conversation, they get a second chance. And hopefully, this one goes a little better than the first.
Emma, have you thought any more about our weekend plans?
A little. There are so many things we could do that I'm having trouble choosing just one.
Same here. We could go to the beach if the weather stays nice, or we could spend the weekend in the mountains.
Both sound great. Personally, I'd rather go to the mountains. I haven't been hiking in months, and I miss being outdoors.
That sounds like a good idea. We should check the weather forecast before we decide anything.
Definitely. If it's going to rain all weekend, we should probably make different plans.
Speaking of rain, I should buy a new umbrella. Mine broke during that storm last week.
You could stop by that shop near the train station. They usually have good quality umbrellas.
That's true. I could go there after work tomorrow.
Have you finished packing yet?
Not even close.
Emma, you should start tonight. Every trip becomes stressful when you leave everything until the last minute.
I know, you're right. If I start now, I won't have to rush tomorrow.
Exactly. If I were you, I would pack the important things first. That's actually smart advice.
Last time, I packed clothes and snacks, but somehow I forgot my phone charger.
I remember. You spent half the trip trying to borrow mine.
And you reminded me about it every single day.
Because it was funny.
What about food? Should we bring something with us?
We could bring sandwiches for lunch and maybe some fruit for snacks.
Good idea. I'd rather bring food from home than spend too much money at tourist places.
Same. Food is always more expensive at popular destinations.
If we leave early, we could stop at that bakery we both like.
Oh, that's a great idea. Their pastries are amazing.
I know. I'd rather eat one of their chocolate croissants than almost anything else for breakfast.
Now you're making me hungry.
You know,
I really need a relaxing weekend.
Me too. Work has been so busy lately.
If I had an extra week off, I would probably travel somewhere far away and completely disconnect from everything.
Honestly, I would do the same. No emails, no meetings, no alarms.
That sounds perfect.
It does. But for now, a simple weekend trip should help.
You're right. Sometimes we think we need a huge vacation when all we really need is a short break.
Exactly.
So our plan is check the weather, pack early, buy snacks, and leave Saturday morning?
That sounds perfect.
Great. I feel much more organized now.
Me too. And honestly, this conversation went much better than our last one.
That's because this time we actually knew what we were talking about.
A huge improvement.
Definitely. Now let's just hope the weather cooperates.
If it doesn't, we could always make a new plan.
True. And whatever happens, I think we're going to have a great weekend.
I would agree with that.
All right, everyone. It's time to go back to the question we asked at the beginning of today's episode. Remember the situation? You forgot your umbrella. It started raining. And later you asked, I forgot my umbrella. What blank I do next time? Could, should, or would?
And the correct answer is should. I forgot my umbrella. What should I do next time? Because you're asking for advice. You're looking for a recommendation. You're asking someone what the best action would be in the future.
Exactly. Let's quickly compare all three. What could I do next time? This asks about possible options. You're exploring possibilities. What should I do next time? This asks for advice. You're asking what the best choice is. And what would I do next time? That sounds unusual because you're talking about a future action as if it's imaginary or hypothetical.
Great job if you got the answer right. And if you didn't, don't worry. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is understanding. And now, let's do a quick speaking challenge.
Repeat after us. I could learn a new skill this year. I should exercise more often. I would travel more if I had more free time. One more time. I could, a possibility. I should, advice. I would, an imaginary situation or preference.
If you can create your own sentences using those three patterns, you're already making great progress. And that's exactly how fluency grows. One sentence at a time.
Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of today's episode. We started with 3 tiny words that seemed confusing, and hopefully now they feel much more manageable. Just remember, could is often about possibilities, suggestions, abilities, and polite requests. Should is about advice, recommendations, and expectations. Would is about preferences, imaginary situations, and polite offers. Now it's your turn. Head down to the comments and write 1 sentence using could, 1 sentence using should, and 1 sentence using would. Make them personal, make them funny, or make them about your daily life. And if you're feeling ambitious, write a short conversation using all 3 words naturally. We love reading your examples. Thank you so much for listening today. Keep practicing, keep speaking, keep making mistakes, because that's how learning happens. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everyone. Bye, everyone, and keep learning English one conversation at a time.